Welcome to the West Ada School Board meeting. It is August 22nd, 2022 at 6 o'clock in the evening. If we'd all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are not.
All right. At this time, we'll turn it over to Dr. Bubb for a superintendent update.
Madam Chair, trustees, we are incredibly excited that tomorrow is the start of school. I hear it's chicken nuggets and French fries, which is a big day for West Ada for lunch tomorrow. And so we're just excited to get the school year started. We went out, if everybody notices, we're in a little bit more casual attire than normal. The executive team and district staff were able to visit schools today. We took buses to every single school in the district, jumped off with ice cream, and gave our teachers and staff that were on campus ice cream, just wishing them a good start to the school year, a smooth start to the school year. The second thing that I'm going to say that I'd just like everybody to take note of, if you look on the screen in front of you, that is our bus stops as they stand today. I'm going to say this in two ways. I'm going to give a kudos to a team of people, RD, Aaron, Jonathan, Nikki, Marcy, and David Reinhardt, myself, were here late Friday and Saturday. Friday, we were informed that there was an issue with First Trans not speaking to our power school system. And so people were having trouble finding out exactly what their buses were. And so we sat down, and Marcy, those of you who don't know Marcy really does our planning for the district. She said, well, my system might be able to help, but it's going to take a lot of manpower. And so we stayed Friday night and all day Saturday to input every single bus stop across the entire district. We are the largest mass transit system in the state of Idaho, bar none. So we know it's not perfect. We're trying to provide transportation across the area. If you don't know this, the two dots, or the few dots, I should say, in the upper right-hand corner as you're staring at that, that's Avamore. We transport from Avamore down. And then I just got off the phone and spoke with a patron who lives in North Kuna. We transport that entire area. So it's a beast to get done. These are stops that we have. These are just our regular bus stops. And this does not include our Watts system. So in addition to what you see right here, this is getting kids to and from school. We also have a Watts system that kids can pick up buses at their local school throughout the district. It's a huge undertaking. We are very appreciative of Cascade and the work that they've done. We're appreciative of the personnel we have, specifically Aaron and RD, who have worked countless hours to get this done. And I just want to take a moment for everybody to see the visual. When we put this in, and we were actually looking at the number of stops that happen across the district, it's telling, just as a picture when you see this. We have a lot that goes on to make transportation happen in the district. It's not always perfect. We recognize that. As we delivered ice cream today in school buses, I will tell you this. All of our buses were on time because we were on them, and there's only 6 running today, which was awesome. But we look forward to an efficient system, and we're going to address this on a regular basis. We will look to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community to get them to school, to and from school every single day. And so we want to thank Cascade and the bus drivers that are there.
Thank you so much. All right, moving forward, we're going to have our district spotlight. Our first will be done by Deputy Superintendent Nick Smith regarding school and student safety. I feel like we need music or something, right?
My walk-up music.
Like an intro.
Good evening, Madam Chair and trustees. Thank you for this opportunity tonight to give you an overview of our school safety. Before I get into my presentation, I'd like to introduce 2 people. Tonight, there he is. On the other side of the pillar, we have Lieutenant Sean Harper. He's here from the City of Meridian. He's a lieutenant and works with the Community Services Division. We also have Jeff Stans, who's very uncomfortable without a tie on today. And he is our high school director, and he coordinates all of our emergency response and incident command operations in the district. He also serves as a liaison between the different incident command organizations across the valley. So, Lieutenant Harper is going to come up after I do my presentation and talk to you a little bit, and then Mr. Stans is going to be here to answer any specific questions you guys might have. So let's see here. Oh, there's that slide. All right, so tonight's presentation is really going to focus on what we are doing in the district in relation to school safety. School safety really is a continuous process of implementation, evaluation, and enhancement as new technologies come out and new opportunities for enhancing our school safety measures are available. We are constantly on the look for ways that we can improve safety in our schools. The focus of this spotlight specifically is looking at the safety measures that we utilize in the West Ada School District that we have implemented to ensure our students are safe and that we have a safe and secure learning environment for all students. Wrong way. So the first area that I want to talk about, and Lieutenant Harper is going to talk a little bit about this as well, but the West Ada School District currently has 23 school resource officers stationed at schools across our district. Bless you. We partner with the City of Meridian, Ada County Sheriff, and the City of Boise, which 3 different jurisdictions, 3 different organizations. That can be a little bit tricky. Many districts are only dealing with one, and so that's something that we work with. I think you're all aware of Mayor Simonsen's State of the City address on June 1st when he proposed adding an additional 6 SROs that would be dedicated to Meridian elementary schools. So we're really excited about that opportunity. And Ada County Sheriff is also committed to adding an additional SRO to the ranks. Another system that we've put in place in the West Ada School District are the access control systems. These are systems that control the locking and unlocking of our doors into our schools. The West Ada IT department is currently in the process of finalizing the installation of those control systems in each of our schools. For the start of the school year, I believe we've got the access control systems in place everywhere. We're still working on fine-tuning some of the video that you can be able to see who's at the front door, but we've troubleshooted that and have a solution in place for the first day of school. And one of the requirements is that all employees do wear their badges at all times so that they can lock and unlock those doors getting into the school. And so that's a way of controlling access into our schools, and it's a continuous process. Raptor Technologies, this is something that you may have heard a little bit about. We've had this in our schools for a while now, but all West Ada schools utilize the Raptor system. This performs background checks on visitors when they enter the school. So when a visitor comes into the school, they bring their driver's license. The driver's license is dropped into what's affectionately called the toaster, and it scans it and checks it, the individual, against the sex offender registry and other criminal databases. If there is a flag that's issued, then administration and law enforcement are notified of that flag. The system also prints badges, so when a visitor is in our school, they would have a badge that they can place on them. So if they're walking down the hall, I'm a teacher, I see them coming down the hall, I know that they've gone through the system, they've been approved, they're okay to be there. If I see somebody walking down the hall that I don't recognize, they don't have a badge, then I need to address them, ask them if I can get them to the front office where they can be checked. The system also generates a school level report. So if we have we're going to talk a little bit about incident command here in just a minute and some of our evacuation drills and various lockdowns. If we have to initiate one of those, this generates a report so we know exactly who's in our building. So if we have to evacuate the building, we can account for those individuals. One of the other measures that we are taking this year to secure our schools is the locking of classroom doors. So this school year, We are going to be requiring that all doors be locked during instructional hours, classroom doors. Main offices, counselors' offices, and libraries can remain open unless that space is being used as a classroom. We've worked with principals and asked them to let us know if they have any classroom doors that need to be addressed. If there is a lock that's not working or a door that isn't shutting properly, we've asked for them to submit a help desk ticket so we can get that addressed immediately. The other thing that we've talked about is wanting to make sure that we're not disrupting the educational learning process. So if there is a class where we're trying to do instruction in a hallway with small groups and kids are coming and going, you know, we can leave the door open for that period of time so that the instruction can take place. We also have CTE programs where they might have a giant garage door open, and it doesn't make sense to be opening, and closing that every time we drive a car in and out or something of that nature. So individual situations where we have a unique situation where it would impact the instruction, we'll work with principals. Principals will work with regional directors to see if we can troubleshoot that and find solutions. This brings us to the Idaho Standard Command Response for Schools, ISCRS. This is a uniform process of doing incident command across the state of Idaho. Basically, it provides uniformity in language across all jurisdictions and across the state of Idaho when dealing with emergency situations. It was developed statewide in collaboration with Idaho law enforcement, fire departments, school personnel, all coming together, working on common language and common responses to a variety of incidents. The commands were developed in such a way that they could fit into the unique culture of a school district and the unique culture of individual schools. And with that in mind, our West Ada schools revise their incident commands, their safety plans annually to make sure that they're up to date and ready for implementation. As you can see here, there are 4 main incident commands that are designed to address a variety of situations that somebody might face in a school. The 4 commands are lockdown, hall check, evacuation, and reverse evacuation. And you can see up there on the picture there, you can see kind of what each one of those constitute. So we're going to watch a quick video on one of the lockdown drills. So this is a video that is posted to the website, the Idaho Standard Command Response website. In this video, you're going to recognize the location, but you're also going to recognize some of the faces in this video. And so with that, I don't know if I click play or if nope, we don't have audio. It's all the way up. Yeah, I can exit the show and if I have a keyboard.
That drawer, slide down.
This will be quick. Ooh. Nope, that's not even. Well, I apologize about that. Yeah. Okay, let's try this. I'm thinking we don't have audio again. Okay. Apologize about that, but as you can see, there are a number of incident command videos on here that districts can utilize for training staff and preparing for the different incidents that they may face in a building. And you're not going to get to see it, but the videos do highlight West Ada schools, West Ada staff, and they're used statewide. Mr. Stans is the star of the video I was going to show you, but alas, we don't get to watch it. Let's see here. Let's get back to the PowerPoint. Yeah, there you go. Let's see. Yeah, right there. Pull that together. So a little bit about what to expect. So when we initiate an incident command, parent or guardian's cooperation really is of the utmost importance. We need to make sure that parents and guardians, one, know what's going on, what to expect, so that the emergency response folks can do their job. And so one of the things that we do ask parents and guardians to do is to not call the school and do not show up at the school. I know that's really hard to do as a parent and as a guardian, but to ensure that we're able to respond to the incident appropriately and that law enforcement and or fire departments are able to respond, we need to make sure that we're not clogging up the roadways and the parking lots to access the school. And so we ask that they don't call, we ask that they don't show up. We ask that they do check out the West Ada School District website for more information, as well as sign up for emergency text messages. So our commitment is that we'll continue to update the website and to send out information through the emergency text messaging system so parents and guardians can stay up to date and are knowing what's going on without having to call the school. Another resource that we have in the state of Idaho is CTEL Now. And this is a new system that has been introduced in the state of Idaho. It's a new initiative from the Idaho Office of School Safety that allows students, staff, and community members to report circumstances and incidents that draw concern. Whether it is a actual threat that they see on social media or something that is just out of the ordinary. They are able to submit a concern through the CTEL Now website. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There is a link for CTEL Now on all of our school web pages and our district web page. And basically, when somebody submits a concern, it goes to the Office of School Safety. They are able to analyze it and make a determination as to whether or not law enforcement needs to be contacted immediately, so they can call 911, contact 911, or they can determine that it's a lower level threat and they simply forward it on to our school district administration, so we can look into it and we can see what needs to be done. Each one of our administrators is registered with the CTEL Now system so that they can get those alerts, so they can get that information from the Office of School Safety at the state level. And there's also a mobile app. There's a hotline, as you can see, that people can call as well. So this is a new resource that we have in working to keep our schools safe. As I talked about at the beginning, school safety is a constantly evolving process, and this is one of those new tools that we have. And with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Lieutenant Harper and let him address you for a moment. And then if you have any questions after that, we'll be happy to answer them. Are you going to do the whole spiel from the video? Just kidding.
I need a teleprompter for that. Thank you for having me. I'm Lieutenant Sean Harper with Meridian, as I was previously introduced. Just a couple of things. I'd first like to say thank you to you all for the partnership that we've had between Meridian and West Ada. We're pretty fortunate to live in a community that supports its educators and supports its first responders. So that's a pretty special community to live in. In regards to school safety, West Ada and Meridian, Ada County, all of our law enforcement and our fire partners have really worked hard to make sure that our schools are safe and ready to deal with any type of emergency. With ISCRS, as you guys well know, it was something that was a grassroots effort that really made sure that we heard from educators first to make sure to figure out what works in a school environment. Because a lot of programs, there's a lot of good programs out there, but we wanted to do it a little different and hear from the educators first and figure out what works best for them instead of vice versa, which is usually how it works. So we've done a lot of good things. I think West Ada is in a very good place. We have very safe schools. We continue to push forward with a good school safety culture, which is really where it starts. Because if our kids are safe and our teachers feel safe, then the environment is going to be perfect for learning. As myself, I teach on the side as well at the college level, so I do understand what it's like to be in a classroom instructing, and to feel safe really allows you to do what you do best, and more importantly, allows the kids to learn. A few things that we're wanting, or that I needed to address, I guess, is the locked doors. It is a big change, but it's something that is done across the country. So it's not something new. It's not something different. It's going to take some time, some adjustments in the classroom, but I think any educator, they're very adaptable, and they'll be able to figure out how to make it work. The reason we really focused on doing this was through the history of active threats in a school environment, a locked classroom door has never been breached. People talk about, well, we've had Sandy Hook, we've had a lot of different significant events that have occurred in our school settings, but not one door has ever been breached, meaning it's never been opened and kids accessed or staff accessed. So that is a huge part to the safety of our students and our staff. And I say ours because I feel like I'm part of the West Ada family. So as you'll see, I kind of talk as if I'm part instructor, part police officer. So I think that's a big addition to our safety plans. Again, I know I have friends who are teachers in the West Ada School District, and I know it's going to take a little time to settle in, but it's the right thing to do. Our community, you guys, law enforcement, fire, we expect our schools to be safe, and this is another measure, another step in the right direction to making sure that we're doing those things. Besides that, I think finishing up with the access control is another key part, because you don't want schools to turn into a place where it feels like you're walking into an institution, if you know what I mean. A prison, something like that. You still want it comfortable. You want people to be able to come in and feel safe, but still have access. But I think with limiting access to our schools, again, that's a key part of school safety. Wearing lanyards with your badges on them is very important. We still have to coach and help people to get there, because it's not happening all the time, but it's improving. But for when we're responding, we need to see those badges, and it really helps us differentiate between who's supposed to be there and who's not. Besides that, I'm really looking forward to the school year. We've got 6 new SROs coming on, and we'll implement 4 initially. So we'll have one here at the district footprint, and they will have 3 in the elementary schools starting out, and then we'll have an additional corporal, which is going to add to supervision, because when you have staff spread all over the district, we need to make sure we have good supervision. The final 2 SROs, ESROs, elementary school SROs, will come on right after Christmas break. And that's really just due to staffing. This was a big lift for us, but it's something that I think the community expects. Me as a parent with 2 kids in the West Ada School District, I expect it. And I think it'll also really allow us to do a lot more prevention and education with our primary school kids, the K through 5, K through 6. So that's an exciting time. We'll have to adapt a little bit. But I look forward to coming back next year and telling you about all the benefits of us doing that and working together. So I'll stand for questions.
Are there any questions that we can address?
Trustee Bachland?
Thank you. Deputy Superintendent Smith and Lieutenant Harper, thank you for being here tonight for your presentation. I think it's really important that we hear some of the things that are being implemented in the West Ada School District, and I think that these are some really good programs that are taking place, and I appreciate you guys being here tonight. I just had a couple of follow-up questions. The first is about the locked doors. For clarity, locked doors in this instance are just working one way, i.e. it is to prevent people from entering the classroom, but those who are inside the classroom, there's no need to unlock door to exit, is there? Or what is the case with that?
Chairman Frazier and Trustee Bacleon. In my experience, typically you can exit the classroom without having to unlock it. It's re-entry into the classroom where the door would be locked.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. And are there any instances where it would be like locked to prevent both exit and entry, or is it all just the one way?
I don't believe we have any classrooms that would require that. If we did, we could probably get that fixed. That would be a simple change out of the locking system.
Okay.
Madam Chair, really quick.
Yeah, go ahead,
Trustee
Dr.
Bacleon, it's fire code that doors are that you can exit the room at any time. So we would not have any classrooms closed. We wouldn't be locking students in classrooms. It would be more locking outsiders from coming into classrooms.
Thanks for that. I actually was aware. I just wanted to make sure that, for public record, that everybody's aware that it's just a one-way lock. Yeah. My other question is about badging in. So if somebody checks in, a guest comes into the school, and you mentioned that they put their ID in and then they run it through registry, and if something comes up in one of those registries, then resource officers and administration is made aware. Is there a next step after they're made aware, or what is the next step after that?
Yeah. Chairman Frazier and Trustee Bacleon. So the next step would be for the administration or the school resource officer to address the individual. Perhaps bring them into the office, have a conversation with them about what came up on the background check, for lack of a better word. So that would be the next step, would be a conversation with them to address the issue.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Other questions? Vice Chair Zuna?
Thank you. Lieutenant Harper, you are part of the West Ada family, and you have been, so thank you for your support. My question is to have a good learning environment for kids. You know, we need safe schools, and so I appreciate all of the work that's going into this. But we also need our kids to feel safe, to be ready to accept that learning environment and be part of that. When we have a lockdown drill, that's a drill, sometimes that can create fear in our students. When we have a lockdown that's not a drill, you know, the kids get really worked up. How do we make sure that with these locked doors that we're not actually creating more fear for our kids and making them feel less safe, when what we're really trying to do is provide that safety around them? And I've heard from several parents, mostly of younger kids, that they're worried about talking about these locked doors is actually going to make them feel less safe.
So Chairman Frazier and Vice Chair Ozuna, I certainly can understand where you're coming from and what you're saying. My experience has been working in a school where we did this already, that there was nothing that ever rose to administrative level, that there was concerns. Kids just go on about their day. The block doors didn't seem to impact them at all. So it's been implemented in other places as Lieutenant Harper identified. I've done it in previous schools that I've been in, didn't see that it had a negative impact on kids. I think an important point to think about is that it's my understanding that 40% of our teachers across the district are already doing this, have already done it last year and implemented it. And from my knowledge, there wasn't a negative impact in those schools and in those classrooms. So, yeah, please.
I have to add something to that. I think with young people, the biggest thing is explaining the whys. And again, as a parent, I'm going to wear two hats while I say this, is they're always asking why, and I've got to have an answer. And if I don't have an answer, I'm going to find somebody that has the answer. Unfortunately, we live in a time where kids are having to do lockdown drills and do these things that I know many of us never did. I did earthquakes, tornadoes, and everything else under the sun. But with this, I think kids, we've been doing it for so long that if we're showing them that we're taking every measure possible to keep them safe, and this is something that's going to continue to keep them even safer, as long as we're explaining that to them, I think that will help them understand, and it's going to bring ease to parents in the long run, because we're doing everything possible to make sure that that environment in the classroom is safe and conducive to learning. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I do have one, which I kind of know the answer to, but just for the record, it was a question that I got several times today. The bathrooms are not locked, correct?
Chair Frazier, that's correct. Bathrooms would not be locked.
Thank you, just so we have that stated. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, thank you so much. We appreciate so much what you've done. All right, next will be our Chief Academic Officer, Marcus Meyers, with an update on summer school.
All right. Good evening. Board, Superintendent Dr. Bubb, and Chair Frazier. We get the opportunity tonight to highlight summer school. And before we get going through the evidence of impact and what we did and the logistics behind it and all of the tremendous celebrations, here's what I'd really like to point out. First, we were out at schools today. In those schools were groups of energetic teachers and staff, super excited about what happens tomorrow in West Ada, which is our clientele is back. Our students are back, our families are back, and that level of energy that it brings to the situation, on top of the wonderful ice cream that's there and the chicken nuggets tomorrow, is just absolutely admirable, knowing that this is happening tomorrow. All the work and all the efforts are taking place tomorrow. And it really is that piece of evidence in West Ada to say, this is why we do what we do each and every single day and why we're so excited to be here. Our clientele is back, and we're going to give it everything we've got. School hasn't started yet, and our teachers are already doing that. Our staff are already doing that, and our administrators are already doing that. And so I want to highlight that too. And again, speak to the evidence behind what we do in West Ada, which is we answer this question all the time, which is what is it we want our students to learn? What is most important at every grade level and within every content area to say our kids cannot walk away without knowing this. And then by doing that, we need to ask ourselves, well, how do we know they've learned it? And so we do that through our progress monitoring pieces and through our assessments and through our testing and what we do together as a system to ensure that we know those students. And then lastly, we say to ourselves, well, what are we going to do if they've learned it or they haven't learned it? Answering that question, what do we do when we haven't learned it, doesn't stop at the ring of the school bell at the end of the day in West Ada. It continues before school, after school. It happens during school with our intervention blocks and what that looks like. It happens with changes of instruction to meet the needs of kids, and it happens over the summer. So when we leave in the summertime, and when some of us leave in the summertime and we start our well-deserved breaks and we take a moment to chill and relax and re-energize ourselves for the next school year, there are a team of very dedicated teachers, staff, and administrators at building levels and at district levels who say, this is an opportunity we have to meet the needs of our kids. To ensure that we answer that question, we are absolutely not going to let go of student learning over the course of the summer because we respond when students haven't learned those essential standards. What are we going to do? And so that evidence that they're going to share with you and the celebrations behind the face behind the numbers, right? The face behind the percentages, because there are those students who showed up and said, I just need another try. I need another opportunity to do this. And we gave it to them. And that took people to coordinate that. And that really is the celebration this evening as well. It's our dedication to seeing all students succeed in that systemic response that it doesn't matter which school you go to, that you go to West Ada. And so as a system of schools, here's what we're doing together. And then also we talk about this term West Ada worthy. What does it mean to step up and say, I got this, I'm going to take care of this, I'm going to make sure these students learn. This is such great evidence of that thought and that culture in West Ada that we do nothing. We stop at nothing short to ensure that students succeed. And so Region Director Dave Moser is going to come up and talk with you around that evidence, the highlights of celebration and the faces behind the name with that. When he does that, I just want to thank him for his coordination and efforts behind that, and the administrative team that are with him this evening, who really put forth all of that work and all those efforts. I also want to let you know that this is one celebration and snippet into what took place over the summer in supporting kids, including additional elementary programs, both with students with specific identified needs in areas, but also opportunities for enrichment and intervention over the course of the summer that happened across many of our schools in West Ada. And so, with nothing more, here's Mr. Moser.
Thank you, Marcus. Madam Chair, trustees, Dr. Bubb, good evening. I really have the pleasure this evening to stand in front of you and talk about summer school. And like Marcus said, there's so much to celebrate with summer school and what was accomplished this summer. So tonight's purpose is really to give you a high-level view of what happened, and really I do want to spend most of the time turning this over to the administrators that really were the spine behind the work that was accomplished. So this first slide is really has to do with how we identify students that will qualify for summer school. So this is one of the ways that we do receive some additional funding from the state that really supplements our summer school program. So this also works with our high school academies when we start looking at students and who will qualify for at risk. So one of the ways that we get our students in is to look through the qualifications here, but then others, we have some students that will use it for enrichment, especially at the high school level when they're looking at completing their senior project and getting that out of the way. So the options, wow, we had many options this summer, really 7 different ways for students depending upon their age that we could serve them in the summer. So we had in-person high school, in-person middle school, virtual schoolhouse, and then each of the academies were able to continue with their learning through the summer. So remember, our academies are competency-based, so learning continues. Time is not a fixed variable. So the counselors and the administrators at those schools work to identify students that would be interested in continuing their work through the summer. So the 4 academies, 3 academies including Rebound, continued learning through the course of the summer. Just an overview of what it looked like. Summer school was Monday through Thursday this summer for the most part. The first day of the second session was, we went Wednesday through Friday. That was July 6th through the 8th, so that Wednesday through Friday. So 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, which is not a bad time for summer hours for some of our students and certainly the staff as well. High school, there was 1 class per session, 2 sessions, so a student had the ability to earn 2 credits. Similarly, in middle school, students could earn 2 credits, but it was an AM and a PM. So we thought that the best thing that we could do is have our middle school students, instead of taking the same class all day long for 6 hours, to break it up into an AM and PM. So that's what the time and the sessions looked like for each of those programs. And then virtual schoolhouse kept roughly those same hours as well, depending upon the level. To continue with the highlights, having the middle school and the high school all at Meridian High School this summer really paid dividends for us to have. It worked for transportation. It worked for consolidating some of the services that I have as a second bullet. We had an assistant principal that was working between the middle school and the high school, Danny Daw, working with our special ed supports. One of the things that Mr. Meyers mentioned is the extended school year for our students that have those specific needs. We're also at Meridian High School, working with the security, the nurses, substitutes, counselor, and then, like I mentioned, transportation. The Monday through Thursday was a highlight, was a drawing point for our students, and as well as when we're trying to find teachers to staff our programs. So, and then that bell schedule, like I'd already mentioned. So really what I want to do right now is turn this over, I'll turn it over to Kristen Hayner, who is our summer school principal for the high school, and then we'll just transition to our middle school principal, Nick Parker, and then Dr. Reberry will wrap it up with virtual schoolhouse, and then I'll visit just a little bit more about the academies at the end. So right now I'll turn it over to Kristen.
Madam Chair, trustees, Dr. Bubb, thank you for giving me the opportunity tonight to highlight some of the things that we did this summer. This is, gosh, year I think 6 for me being involved with summer school. So in my mind, it's kind of 3 chunks, right? Before COVID, COVID, and now post-COVID. So I will say that I think out of all the years, this was truly one of the best years that we had in summer school this year. We were able to bring students back on campus for the summer high school. In middle school, we were on campus last year, but for high school, we brought kids back in person on campus, and that was really great that we were able to do that for this summer. So thank you for that opportunity because I think it really paid off in the end. So do I have another slide? Oh, okay, right there, sorry. So as you can see, we had kids in all levels there, divided up by grades, and our freshmen are typically our highest number. Seniors, we did not, this was probably, in my experience with it, the lowest number of seniors that we've had in summer school this summer. However, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the senior project in most schools has moved to the first semester. That was a big chunk of kids that would take it in the summer, was those kids that wanted to get their second semester classes out of the way because they graduate early. So I wasn't surprised by that number for our seniors to have a very low number in there. And then of course a lot of them are working, so I know virtual schoolhouse was a real benefit for them, getting their econ and American government. Sorry, Sharon, I'm still in some of her thunder. But for us in person, it was kind of expected there. We were not too surprised by that number at all. And what you're looking at here is I really want to support some of the staff that work. This is high school and middle school. These were the teachers, the support staff, the security, the front office. They are a crazy, wonderful group of people, and they work very, very hard for our students. They show up every day, they're there every day, and they're doing the best for those kids in the summer when they could be obviously doing other things, but they show up every day. And this is really part of what makes it for me worth coming back for every summer, is the staff, because there's a very dedicated group that come back every year, and no matter what schedule we throw at them, they're like, are you in for next year? Absolutely. So they're just a really great group of people that choose to work with us. We're very fortunate to have them in our district for sure. Some highlights when we look at the program, we had 103 students with IEPs, 504s, and EL who attended. We have one special ed teacher that was shared through high school and middle school, and so she was navigating a lot, but we were fortunate to hire enough support with paraprofessionals that she's able to manage them all very well. Our relationship with Virtual Schoolhouse, we felt went very, very well. We had a lot of kids who were in person with us and taking an online class through Virtual Schoolhouse. And we hope to continue that. We hope to streamline some of our processes. So registration for those kids is a little bit better, but for sure, we felt like it was for those kids who were really motivated to get those credits done, it worked out really well. We had 545 credits attempted, 532 credits earned. So we had a 98% pass rate, which we felt it was really great. It was very successful. And we're super proud of those teachers and those students for being there and for pulling that out, because students, what do we do when they don't learn? Like Marcus said, we give them an opportunity to do it again, and the staff that was there to support them in that. And I think I'm going to turn it over to middle school with Mr. Nick Parker.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Bubb. I just want to reiterate some of the things that Mrs. Hayner said about how wonderful of a summer it was. We were able to give kids those building blocks that they need to move forward, and they came with a smile on their face. And that's not something that you see a ton with kids, especially in the summertime, where all their friends are out and they have to jump on that bus and go to school. But our staff made it happen, and it was just a great summer. I felt very supported by Mr. Mosier, by Kristen, by Danny Daw. So I want to say thank you to them. And this is a breakdown of our numbers. We had 90 kids sign up. At the end, there were 75 kids that ended up going all 6 weeks. You can see the breakdown, a lot of 7th graders. And I'm not sure, and I can't wait to look at next summer, due to COVID, is this one group that was affected more by COVID, by being out of school? And I don't know, but something to look at, something that I wanted to look forward to. Our highlights, and I'm going to be very brief. Our teachers were number one. They were the best thing that we had. And our kids showed it by showing up every day, once again, and earning those credits. You can see that last bullet, I'm jumping around a little bit, but 131 credits attempted, and 93% were earned. Not everybody took 2 courses. Some students took 1 course. Small classes. My largest class was 17 kids. And for those kids to get that one-on-one time with that teacher, it was just amazing. And you could see the growth. You could see it happen. We had 40 students with IEPs, 504s, or EL, and I'm 99% sure that all but 5 of our students were at risk. So that was a big thing too. We were giving them a place to come this summer where it was safe. We were feeding them every day. So small classes, a lot of credits, and teachers and kids that enjoyed it. So that's all I have. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Any questions? Comments? No, thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Yes.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Trustees, and Dr. Bubb. So as it was mentioned with the others, we were excited for the opportunity to be able to provide that flexible opportunity for students that weren't able to go in person for summer school. So our elementary enrollment, oh, those numbers are a little small up there, I'm sorry. We were thrilled to work with almost 136 elementary students in grades kindergarten through 3rd grade this summer. Our teachers met with them 3 times during the week for a 7-week period from June through July. Live, I mean online through Teams and then doing application work on the side. Middle school enrollment, we worked with almost 100 middle school students throughout the district, and we had representation from almost all of the middle schools. At high schools, we did have students from each of the high schools in the district, including some of the academies and Rebound as well. Asynchronous does offer an opportunity for those students that needed that flexible schedule, as was discussed earlier. And I'd like to point out the 11th grade was our biggest group at 254 kids, and I think it was just like Mrs. Hayner mentioned that they were trying to get some of those senior courses out of the way. We were flooded for Government A and B, we were flooded for English 12A and B, and then the senior project as well. For our highlights, we were able to offer that virtual opportunity again. The elementary offerings for grades K through 3. We were structured to provide additional assistance for those students that needed accommodations just like they did in the brick and mortar. So we had a teacher that was able to do that. We had a great relationship with the in-person summer school. And then we did learn a little lesson with our middle school students that we should probably structure it differently because we didn't have the greatest pass rate for them, but that was mostly because once we took a break, a week break at 4th of July, many of them decided they liked the break and didn't necessarily want to come back. So we have some ideas of how to do that differently for next year. So thank you for that, and I will turn it back over to Dave.
Madam Chair, Trustees, Dr. Bubb. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the high school academies also had their version of summer school. So the way that was set up is we had a facilitator or a moderator of the learning that was happening for each of the academies, and they were housed at Meridian High School as well. So that individual was responsible for working with the students and encouraging them to earn the credits that they did earn. So with the academies, in addition to the number of credits earned, it's valuable to point out that there were 4 graduates that happened over summer school as well. So to bring this to a close, a lot of positive things, and really, as you heard with our administrators, it's about the people, and the 3 of them were wonderful to work with along the way, and they're already challenging me to think differently for next year, and we will have to do that because of the time that we come back next year, so it will be condensed. However, the same opportunities will exist, and I think there will be benefits when families and students think about, well, just having summer school just in the month of June and June only. So those are some of the things that we're working through right now. So with that, we had approximately 1,500 credits earned this summer, so school continues no matter the time of year. So I will stand for questions if there's anything. If not, thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Any questions or comments? Vice Chair Zuna?
Thank you. Just a quick comment for me. You know, I know students that took this for credit recovery, that took this for additional learning opportunities. Maybe their grade wasn't quite where they needed to be and they needed some more enrichment to move on. And then also a handful of kids I know that took it because they wanted to create open space in their schedule for next year, take additional classes that they otherwise couldn't fit in. And with the way that you have this structured, it worked for everybody with really unique circumstances, and everybody that I talked to had a really positive experience, and I think this is something really special about West Ada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I talked to several people that kind of voiced the same thing to me, so thank you so much for everything you do. We really appreciate it. All right, at this point, we'll open it up for patron input. We did not have anybody sign up ahead of time, but if there's anyone that's come in that didn't have that opportunity, would you like to comment on anything on our agenda? All right, doesn't look like we have any. So we'll move forward with our consent agenda at this time. Would anyone like to make a motion on that? Trustee Benetti?
I move that we accept the consent agenda unanimously.
Is there a second? Trustee Redford?
Second.
All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, we'll move forward with our discussion. The first will be by our Chief Academic Officer, Marcus Meyers, and he will go over our continuous improvement plan. This will be a second reading.
All right, Chair, Trustees, and Dr. Bubb. This is an opportunity for us to review the second reading of West Ada's Continuous Improvement Plan. And before doing so, I just want to let our patrons know who may be listening and who are here this evening, you can view this draft on the board agenda that way as an attached document. And I'm saying that because I'm not going to go piece by piece and goal by goal within that draft, but I'm going to highlight some of the key aspects and changes and revisions since the first reading, and then also just want to clarify the why and the purpose again for our patrons. So again, the Continuous Improvement Plan is a requirement that districts in the state of Idaho submit for the 22-23 school year, and that requirement really is around what are those common assessments that across the state of Idaho students take, and then what are goals by district. The document itself doesn't necessarily identify the results of those, although they are in the same place that you would find the plan on state websites. And so what it does is it really identifies academic achievement and proficiency goals with those statewide metrics, those assessments that students take across the state of Idaho. It really is intended to be an accountability document. It is about saying what are the goals that you set and did you meet those goals? It doesn't really get into the process by which those goals are met or what we do in West Ada to ensure that we have systems and processes in place for those goals to be met, although we did add components of that into our plan itself. So you can add to the plan, you just can't remove any components to that. But we did highlight the key timelines for assessment for units of instruction and banks of instruction, and then what we do as instructors to respond to student needs throughout the course of the year, not waiting until the end of the year to identify if students have learned our essential standards. It is required to be posted on our website by October 1. Based on our timeline here, we'll be well prepared for that to happen and meet that deadline. And then again, it allows for West Ada collaborative teams, and this is from the district level to individual grade levels and departments, to use those long-term goals to then establish their own short-term goals by student cohorts. And we really do focus on what is the impact we're making on those groups of students year by year as they progress through our system. And in the bottom line behind this document represents the impact of our teams and the difference they make on the names, faces, and futures of, and this was that data point I pulled when I submitted this to the board, 40,215 West Ada students. And so we'll talk about percentages within the SIP plan and what that looks like, but again, it represents a percentage of 40,000 plus faces in West Ada. Again, I'm not going to review all of these pieces, just want to highlight what it is and what it isn't. Again, it's not about the planning, the strategic planning behind the processes in West Ada that we ensure improve teaching and learning. It really is about what is that product at the end of the year and what do we expect for it to be. Based on input from the first draft that went before the board, including what we did at the work session. We revised as a team and reviewed to ensure every one of those goal targets were ambitious, held to that ambitious goal set. And to define that term ambitious for our patrons, it really is saying our students are going to reach a goal, and rather it be a minimum goal of learning, we really set that goal at a target that we know we're going to keep swinging at, we're going to keep heading toward. And although we may not have hit some of those targets in our last SIP plan, we do know that we set such ambitious targets that we want to make sure that we're constantly moving forward with our processes, improving every year. Also, while we revised the assessment tools that are indicated on the instructional assessment timeline, that is that report progress narrative that you'll see within there, within the tables that are broken up 4 times over the course of the year. Some of the assessment tools and the timelines by which we're delivering those changed, and so our team changed that. And then added the report of progress narrative. So this is a new component on the SIP plan this year that's required. However, it was a nice opportunity for us to describe summatively what happens in West Data, and really put some words to the documents and the tables that are in the plan itself. I just took a small screenshot from that. It is significantly longer and describes in more detail what happens in West Data across that system. And again, next steps, 3rd reading on September 12th at the board meeting. If approved then, it will be posted on the website long before October 1st in that time frame. Then this plan will also be submitted to the state at that time frame, and there is an approval process for that. With that approval process and the audit, should any revisions need to come back, typically around formatting issues typically, if that's the case, we'll make those revisions on the website that way. Any changes in significant content within the plan, of course, we'll bring that back to the board. It hasn't happened, it's not likely to happen, but I just want to let you know what that process will look like. And then what we do with this plan begins tomorrow. It starts right away. The processes by which we say what is it we want our students to learn and how do we know it, like what are the assessments and the common assessments across West Data that ensure our students are making progress toward these long-term goal targets to make sure that we know it before the end of school. That starts right that first week of school, although the assessment components will start right after Labor Day. Okay? And I'd be more than happy to stand for any questions that you may have.
Any comments or questions? You did such a great job.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is our Deputy Superintendent, Nick Smith. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4. Lucky day. We'll start with the elementary policy and move on.
Good evening again, Madam Chair, trustees, Dr. Bubb. As stated, there are 4 policies before you tonight for a 3rd reading. There are no new edits to any of these policies from the previous readings. But I am going to provide just a brief refresher overview of each of the policies so you know what we're dealing with. So like last time, I'm going to talk about policy 500.1 and 500.2 together. Those are the elementary and secondary attendance policies, and many of the edits are the same in both. So the whole driver behind the revisions to these 2 policies really stem out of the regional director's efforts to basically update the student handbooks, and in doing so they identified the discrepancies or the differences between the 2 policies, so they worked to bring them into alignment. One of the first edits that you're going to see that we brought to you in the 2nd reading is we have updated the language of Joint School District Number 2 to reflect West Data School District. One of the next edits you're going to see is we remove the attendance codes since they're referenced on attendance letters and can be found in Power School. One of the next edits that you'll see is under extended family educational trips. We have added a provision for completing work upon return for work that cannot be prearranged, and we've eliminated the requirement for students to submit a 1-page paper when they're out on an extended family educational trip. This provision is being eliminated as it was not being consistently implemented across the district. The next thing you're going to see is under excessive absences. The language has been revised to reference 15 unverified absences will result in students being unenrolled from school. This change brings the policy in alignment with what schools were actually doing. And the next item you'll see is under excessive absences. We have updated the language related to receiving homebound services to better reflect current practices. The next edit is a section for makeup work and truancy was added to bring the secondary policy in alignment with the elementary policy. And then under habitual truant, the language was revised to state that any student who's deemed habitually truant will be referred to prosecuting attorney pursuant to Idaho Code 33206. The subsequent definition is contained in the code, and the removal of the 10 absences is to bring the policy into alignment with practice. And then on the elementary attendance policy, we have updated language to reflect our full-day kindergarten programs in the district. And with that, I'd happy to stand for any questions related to either of these policies.
Any questions or comments? Trustee Benet?
So I just wanted to comment and to say that I really appreciate very much that a lot of the, what I would call cruft, but a lot of the procedures and the things that are dealt with elsewhere are being streamlined, because we're making these so much more coherent. And I know that as part of the policy review work that you're doing with the committee work, that we're sort of going through that with all of our policies and bringing this high degree of coherence. And I know it's going to take a long time, and I know it's a heck of a lot of work, but I just wanted to comment to say I really appreciate how much, because I think that when it comes to policy, this is a place where less is more. And when you're able to do things like, in particular, strip out like all of those really arcane codes, I know they're important, I know they're valuable, but I also know that they're elsewhere. And to the degree that we're able to go through our policies in a really systematic way and say, are these coherent? Are they making sense? Are there ways that we can streamline them so that people can both understand them, the administration can do its job more effectively, can be more flexible and responsive? I think it's a big task, but I'm so glad that you're putting a lot of effort into it, and I could see it reflected in this, and I think in some of the other policies that you're going to go for. The more that we can make policy and procedure, I think we will all benefit, board, administration, public, teachers, students, everybody. So thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Moving on to our next policy is 603.2. This is the high school credits and graduation requirements. Again, there are no edits to this policy from the previous reading, but to go through it briefly to give you an overview of some of the edits that we have implemented. We have updated the title, simply providing more clarity about the contents of the policy. We've also edited the courses taken in middle school. The language being added brings this policy in alignment with edited language in Idaho Administrative Rule, and that governs middle school students and being able to earn credits. We've also, you'll see edits on page 2 under the homeschool or non-regionally accredited public-private parochial freshman competency credits section. This brings the course credits that we will accept into alignment with our board adopted curriculum. The next substantive addition to this policy is on page 2, pertains to extended learning opportunities as outlined in State Statute 336401 Idaho Code, which allows students to earn credits for extended learning opportunities outside of a traditional classroom. The proposed revisions provide details on what would qualify as an extended learning opportunity for credit and outlines the timeline and process and requirements for being able to receive credits for an extended learning opportunity. The next substantive change you're going to see is on page 3. This pertains to students withdrawing from school. The proposed language is designed to streamline the withdrawal process for our registrars and outlines that students' current grades at the time of withdrawal will be recorded along with a W, so that if a student re-enters into the district after only being on a short amount of time, we know what grade they had when they left. This allows the school to be able to properly re-enroll them in the district. Under the section on retaking courses, a provision has been added that clarifies that if a student passes a course but wants to retake it to get a better grade, they can count the repeated course as an elective credit if the student is short credits when it comes time to graduation. There's a large section that's been deleted under high school graduation requirements that you can see there. That's being removed because that was addressing graduation requirements for students who have graduated already. So it's no longer relevant as students are held to the graduation requirements that are in place when they are freshmen. So being removed. On page 5, you'll see edits related to students taking math in their senior year. This past year, the State Board of Education actually removed that requirement, so it's It's no longer required, but we're going to continue to doing that in the district. But the district has added language that allows for that opt-out that was already allowed in state board rule. And then on page 7, you're going to see language related to the civics test. That was revised. This is simply aligning the language for the civic requirements to language that is elsewhere in the policy. Also on page 7, you'll see that we've added graduation requirements for our virtual schoolhouse, and the rest of the edits of this policy are just repeats throughout the other programs in the district. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on this policy.
Any comments or questions? All right, outstanding. Keep going.
All right, moving on to 603.21. This is the high school diploma and graduation ceremony. The proposed revisions contain some technical edits, but the more significant edits relate to adding virtual schoolhouse to the section pertaining to which high school grants a diploma when a student has dropped out of one of our other high schools, like rebound. If a student drops out of one of our traditional high schools and enrolls in virtual schoolhouse, their diploma would be issued by virtual schoolhouse. Another substantive change to this policy pertains to wearing stoles during graduation. Under the proposed revision, students who have enlisted in a branch of the United States military are authorized to wear associated stoles or pins during their graduation ceremony. In the past, National Honor Society students were allowed to wear cords, and students earning an associate degree or who had met the requirements for a full IB diploma were allowed to wear a stole. So that's one change. Additionally, the proposed language allows students who qualify to receive honor cords after the first Monday in May to receive honor cords as available. So if the school will order additional cords, if they qualify, then they could wear the cords. However, due to printing timelines, this would not be reflected in the pre-printed graduation program due to the lead time that's necessary when we're printing programs for graduation. And then the last proposed change is just related to the graduation speeches and articulates that the graduation speeches will be reviewed by school administration and must be relevant to graduation and without profane or slanderous remarks. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions on that policy.
Any comments or questions? Vice Chair Zuna.
One quick comment. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but I really appreciate that we're allowing our students that have enlisted into the military to be recognized this way. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any others? All right, you did it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Greg Wilson, our Chief Communications Officer, is next with our communication policy.
So, Madam Chair, Trustees, Dr. Bubb, just to be clear, I'm here to present the first reading of the district's new communication policies, a new section 1100. The goal of updating this policy is to have a more professionalized communication over this large organization, leverage our staff in building our brand, and ultimately continue our efforts to build trust as a partner in the community. This first draft does reflect the feedback I received at the July board meeting where we did that work session, and we discussed sort of what the components of this new policy would look like. And before I provide an outline of these policies, let me say that this first reading is under our new process where we're engaging our policy committee. We did that last week. Additionally, this communications policy draft really tries to balance policy with procedure. And I define policy as the overarching objectives and goals that set the direction of the organization, and I think that that's what these do. And then the administrative policies that accompany this are about providing that operational direction and really offer additional actions. These administrative procedures are expected to change more frequently based on new information and our efforts to always be improving the way we do things in the communication shop and more broadly. Just to be clear, the plan is to delete 2 existing policies that covers communications, which will be incorporated in these new communications policies. And these are staff media interactions contained in 401.4, which was adopted in 1994, And then the second existing policy that will be deleted from its current place and incorporated in these new policies is school publications number 503.3, which was adopted in 2009. So in these new policies, there are 7 new subsections, and let me outline them and briefly provide a summary. So policy 1100 is the vision and goals of this new communications policy, and it emphasizes proactive engagement across multiple communications channels to engage students, families, staff, the district community, and state leaders, and build a brand as a trusted partner in the community. The policy 1101, it deals with school-based communications, and it states that the core of school-based communications is but not limited to the school's website, newsletter, and social media accounts. The third new subsection, third new subsection is 1102, which covers media relations, and it states that we should be responsive to our media partners, but it's important that the district's communications team be point in these efforts and provide support and direction on media inquiries. The fourth new subsection, 1102.1, covers public records requests and data requests, and it makes clear that the district's intent is to follow the law and direct these requests to the clerk of the board where they can be fulfilled properly. Policy 1102.2 deals with school publications, and a lot of that is pre-existing policy and makes clear the way that school publications are limited, unlike traditional press publications. Policy 1103 covers district and school operation social media, and this policy emphasizes the importance of social media as a modern communications medium and provides some critical guidelines on content. And finally, policy 1103.1 covers employee use of social media, and this policy makes clear staff responsibilities around social media usage. As I stated before, to implement these policies, there's going to be 4 new sections of administrative procedures. And just really briefly, the highlights of these include to support school-based communications, each principal will designate a media coordinator called a brand ambassador responsible for managing the school's website, newsletter, and social media, among other communications. And we're already in the process of implementing that. And then another highlight is the district's chief communications officer, me, is the point person for media requests, and the principal is the point person within a school district for coordinating with the communications team on this. And again, this is something that largely is in place, but is important to get an administrative policy. So in the coming weeks, we will be reaching out to receive feedback from principals and other staff just about the practicality of these policies and administrative procedures. And then we will be working through the policy committee also in preparing a draft for second and third reading. And with that, Madam Chair, I will take questions.
All right, any questions or comments? Trustee Benetti.
So the first is, boy, this is so needed. So thank you for taking this effort on, and so that we could have, again, some more coherence in our communication policy. We've made some incredible strides, and I'm so appreciative of the effort that's gone into this and all the policies. I love that you're taking an eye towards separating out policy and procedure. It's just something that's very important to me. I thought that policy 1102.1 is a great example of that, where it makes use of referencing existing laws and existing people that we have in place and keeping it really spelt. So to the extent that we can continue to work towards that, that is fantastic. I know that a lot of work has been done on that. I know that a lot of effort that goes into these procedures isn't lost. It just has to go someplace else, or not making your job any easier. But it is so appreciative, because it's, again, something that the public can value, the board can value, administration has more flexibility, can respond quicker. And I love all the effort that's been going into this, and I want to continue to support it. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Vice Chair Zina.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I appreciate all of the effort that's been put into this, and I want to just apologize that I didn't actually have a copy of it, so I haven't reviewed it for this first reading. So I think I missed it, but I'm going to do a review, and any feedback that I have, I'll send to you by email before that second reading. That would be great. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? No, that was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next is our Chief Operations Officer, Jonathan Gillen. And you'll be up for a little while yourself, sir. We'll start with the presentation of the District L2 form.
Good evening, Chair and Trustees, Dr. Bubb. So when we presented the budget, we talked about Budget 101. So tonight we're going to have a different 101 presentation. We're going to have the L2 form 101. So we're going to spend some time, we're going to talk a little about taxes. We're going to talk about how we allocate them. We're going to talk about how we request them. We're going to talk about the process we work through for them. I do want you to know you're not making any decisions tonight. So really tonight's an opportunity to sit back, relax, talk about taxes. Sounds really fun, right? All right, let's get started. Perfect. So L2 form. What is the L2 form and how is it used? So in simple terms, the L2 form, like you would expect most accountants, right? The way we're going to communicate is via a tax form. That's how we would do it, right? So that's what this form is going to do. This is essentially a form that is approved, and then I send over to the state and to the counties, and this is how they levy the property taxes that happen on people's property tax bills. It's based on this information that's put into this. We're going to spend some time talking about inputs into the L2 form. I'm going to briefly kind of walk through what those are, what they look like. I'm going to show you a copy of what the form looks like. It's going to change. So some of the numbers will stay relatively close. A couple of them are going to change a little bit. I'll explain the reason why. And then we'll talk about changes from the previous year, and then we'll finish up with a little levy rate estimate. And I'll warn you, we don't have one yet. And the reason why is because we still don't have market values that are totally finalized. So I'll just kind of give you, that's to get you really excited for the next board meeting when we have that. All right, so inputs into the L2 form. Two of the major ones are really market value and the number of homes. So we levy a dollar amount here at the school district for our items, so they're usually voter approved. Perfect example is the supplemental levy. It's $14 million. So as the number of homes increase, so number of rooftops, we've levied that across an additional number of rooftops. So that helps to spread around the dollar amount. What also happens is your market values, at least in the last few years, have continued to go up, right? And so your assessment has gone up. And so that also increases or has an effect on your individual's home and the taxes. And so you have to know that those are two inputs. Those are things that will go into the L2 form. The form itself has loads of tabs. I didn't share all of that with you. If you really want to read it or look at it, we can sit down and walk through it. Really, I just gave you the summary because that's really the part about the taxes that are levied. Other things that go into the L2 form, there are statutory allowances. So these are dollar amounts that we levy as part of Idaho Code. And you're going to see two of them that we have. You're going to see the tort levy, which is essentially identified under Idaho Code. That is really to help districts with offset of their insurance costs. And then there is the emergency levy, which right now the dollar amount that you see in there is just what we budgeted for. So it's not a dollar amount we've decided on yet. If you remember during the budget process, we kind of talked about there would be a time when we do the L2 form that we can talk about whether the board wants to move forward with that. Approved bond issues, so those are things that taxpayers already approved. Now we're paying the bondholders back, you'll see that. And then student enrollment. I talked a little bit about that emergency levy. So you might be wondering, how come student enrollment plays in? Well, really, that's how we calculate it. Part of the emergency levy calculation is an evaluation of our enrollment last year and an evaluation of our enrollment this year. There's a process that the business office goes through to identify the increases in enrollment, along with a lot of help from our schools. They take head counts in every single classroom throughout the district. So those are really the left side. Now we're going to talk about the dollar amounts on the right-hand side. Levied funds, for us that's supplemental levy, that's $14 million. You'll see that on the form. That's been voter approved. They approved that back in November. The plant facility levy, sometimes we call that the capital levy. That's our capital funding. That's $16 million. That was approved in 2017. That is a 10-year levy that's in place. And then the emergency levy, again, that's at the board's discretion. We can kind of walk through that. And then we'll have some revised numbers at the next board meeting. There's our bonds. They're broken up between pre and post 2008. Really, that's just because of urban renewal agencies and how those are taxed. So really, the bonds itself, we calculate a dollar amount, and then they're split between the market value pre-2008 and post-2008. And the tort levy, I think I spent some time talking about already. So here's a draft of the form. I realized as I was looking at it over the weekend, I didn't give you any headers. So it's really a lot of numbers on a spreadsheet. When you go all the way to the right, you'll see the numbers in white. Those are essentially the dollar amounts that the district would choose to levy should we move forward. And so again, we're not going to do that tonight. There'll actually be a whole different board meeting where that discussion happens. What's keen to note, right, is the $14 million that's been approved already by our taxpayers. The $16 million is much the same. The bonds pre and post, again, those are both taxes that are basically repaying back our bondholders. The taxpayers have already said yes to the bonds. The two numbers that will change, I'll just give you a heads up. The tort levy will change based on market values, so I usually get some updated market values around the end of the month when those get finalized. And then again, the emergency levy, that is all based on enrollment. We'll start tracking that data tomorrow morning as students start enrolling. So again, changes from previous years. I was just going to show you a comparison. Tort levy changed about $50,000. That's about average for how it usually goes up. Some years it's a little less. Again, with the market value increase, that did impact it a little bit more. Bonds, there's a reduction of about $500,000. When we did our debt refunding about 2 years ago, we kind of identified a number of around 30 to 31 million would be hovering around for the next couple of years, so we're right within alignment with that. Supplemental plant facilities, those are the same as they were last year. Emergency levy increase, 3.6 million. Last year, we didn't do one. And so again, the board will have the opportunity to evaluate that. So right now, this is exactly what we put in the budget. And then that's basically drives the overall increase in levied funds overall of 3.2. Levy rate estimate, I always think it's kind of interesting to put our market value up. So that's a $53 billion number. That number continues to grow each year, as you know, and as you can see from your assessments, and just the growth that's happening in the area. And so again, we're able to spread that down. What that does is the levy, as the market value increases, it puts downward pressure on our levy rate. So I do anticipate that while the current levy rate is at 1.58, I do expect it to be lower going into next year. And with that, I will stand for any questions you have.
All right, any comments or questions? Trustee Benetti.
Thank you very much. Although shame on you for using the word relax and taxes in the same sentence. I don't think I've ever heard that.
Accountant joke.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. So I wanted to thank you. Excellent work as always. I wanted to focus specifically on the concept of the supplemental levy. And I know that we're not making any decisions on that tonight, and it was just decided by the voters. But you know, I think my perspective on things like that are put in for, you know, a really supplemental basis, like temporary basis, not meant to become part of the sort of general fund moving forward. And so I just want to make sure that we're always really asking ourselves, is that something is still going to be necessary? Because I just have an aversion to things that are sort of put in temporary and then they always become permanent. And I really want to make sure that we're really being critical about that, you know, particularly because, you know, a lot of the things that had to happen were because of, you know, states' obligations and where they were in their obligations, and you know there's potential news that there might be a special session where they address some of those issues. And so, for instance, if they start to meet some more of those obligations and provide more funding through the standard schedule, that we're always sort of looking about, is this something that's still necessary, right? Because I really don't want it to just become, through inertia, a permanent thing that we're asking the taxpayers to do if it's in fact something that is not necessary. So how would you go about looking at the supplemental and saying, is this something where we may need to make trade-offs, or we have new information that would allow us to potentially not have to make that request moving forward? How would that go about? I know it's not tonight's problem, but you know, this is a long-term thing that we need to be thinking about.
Chair, Trustees, Dr. Bubb, I think whenever you look at evaluating something that's roughly 5.25% of our budget, right? That's going to be a lot of conversation across our district. And so you talked about trade-offs, which I think really is the key to that conversation. As we look at evaluating the supplemental levy, if we wanted to make changes, it's really a discussion about what are the things we're currently doing and how do we want to change those things? And is that a decision we want to make? And is that really the goal of the district and what's best for kids? And so that would take really a lot of that conversation. We would sit down and we would start having some conversations about what does those revenues mean? What would the loss of those revenues look like? What would the impact it would have on the general fund? How would we mitigate that? And then really what are the things that we may have to choose not to do in the future? All discussions that we could have.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Dr. Bubb?
Jonathan, would you mind going back a slide? I just want to make sure you clarify a little bit your giant number that you had there. that estimated market value, can you go through that real quick? So I just want the general public to know that's not our market value. If you want to walk through that, that'd be tremendous.
Yeah. So the way that it's calculated is it basically takes a look at our district and all of the homes, businesses, taxable and non-taxable property within it. So it's not West Ada School District's facilities or our own property values, but it's all of ours. I'm going to use that communal and look around the room. All of our land within the district, and so that has a value that's attached to it, and that's really the work that the assessor does every year. And so what happens throughout the year, but really more starting in June, is that we start getting about every 2 weeks an update on what market values are, because as you would anticipate, trying to calculate the market value of all of Ada and Canyon County, which we do have a smidge of Canyon County, right, that impacts us, is quite a heavy lift. And so they'll continue to send those updates to us. They'll continue to provide that information to us. And that's how we go through and at least look at what our levy rate impact is. Really, for school districts, it's not as important as it is for other taxing entities. So for cities and counties, they actually use part of the new construction roll and a lot of that information in the actual value of the revenues that they can tax and what they collect. For us, we really do flat dollar amounts, so it's more of just a calculation and impact on what we feel like our levy rate will be. It's just kind of a sidebar calculation we do.
Any other comments or questions? No, that was very fun. Thank you so much. Now we'll talk about bus routes.
All right, thank you, Chair, Trustees, Dr. Bubb. So we're going to transition a little bit to transportation. So attached to the agenda was all of the routes for the school district. I'm not planning on covering those tonight. So just so you know, we're going to get a global perspective. We're going to talk a little bit about that. You guys all got a chance to look at that. If you wanted me to cover that, sorry, that wasn't in the plans. So before we go too far, though, I do want to share a couple thank yous. Dr. Bubb already got it to talk about these two folks. But Aaron Sweeney and R.D. Huntley, if you could raise your hands. These are the two fantastic people that we have at our district that work with transportation. Also, Cascade Transportation, our contractor, does a wonderful job of helping serve our students. So I just wanted to share a round of thank yous with them. Okay, so you're going to see a slightly different presentation than what I usually give. So I didn't put this one together, so there's a lot more color, right? You guys are used to my vanilla. There's like little wood boards on the bottom. You're not going to see that today. So actually, I got to tell you, my wife was looking at the slides last night, and she goes, we know you didn't put that one together. So don't worry. I'll have more boring ones for you in the future. But RD did a very good job of putting this together. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about 21-22. We're going to talk about some of the challenges we had just so that we can kind of remember what it looked like. And then we're going to talk about the things we've done in 22-23 to try to replace that. So in 21-22, right, we had too many routes. Our ridership had dropped down partially due to impact of COVID. We had a driver shortage. We spent a lot of time talking about that. We had some software issues. We had, because of the driver shortage, we had extended times on the buses. We had some late buses. And we had all the transportation issues that we are fully aware of. Sometimes that's just how it felt, right? We were trying to put a square peg into a round hole. And so really what we talked about was how do we rethink transportation? How do we take a look at how we're doing things now and how we want to do things better and how we can better serve the needs of our students? And so this is what we came up with, right? These are our goals. Our goal was really to improve efficiency. And I'm also going to use another word, reliability. So the expectation that when we know when the bus is going to be able to come, that we have an understanding of how long our routes are going to be. We wanted to reduce routes consistent with ridership, so identify what our ridership looks like, be able to adjust accordingly to the students and where they're living. Just like we all know in our community and our enrollment, our population is changing, so being able to adjust accordingly. Centralize a bus route, we're going to talk about that a little bit, and you're actually going to get a great example of what that looks like with Watts. But really just looking at how we route our buses, how we try to keep them closer together so that in the event we do have a situation and a driver needs to help out another driver, he has support within that area and it's close by. And then of course always thinking about our schools of choice and our programs that we need to meet their needs. So what did we undertake this summer? We decided to reroute the entire district. And so when we talk about that, we talked about looking at walk distances. We talked about number of stops that we have. We talked about trying to identify ways to, again, make our routes more efficient, make them more reliable. We talked about reducing the number of stops. In some cases, we had bus routes that were 12 and 18 stops. And again, each time we stop, that takes time. There's work associated with that. And so really the staff here, in conjunction with the folks at Cascade, looked at how we do those things to be able to keep our buses more aligned within their region, reduce our stops. Some of the things that Cascade did, you may have seen Cascade buses running outside of just summer school all summer long. Because as we did our routing, we then asked a very experienced bus driver and we asked a new bus driver, hey, we want you to drive this route. Go around, take a look, help us identify if there are any safety concerns, take a look at the time it takes to run the route. We even had folks that were standing there, and when they would stop at the bus stop, they had a clicker. They were timing how long it would take, they expect, for students to come on and off the bus. Right, just really starting to get a little bit more scientific about how we do the things we do, all looking to increase that efficiency. We talked about the driver shortage last year, right? We had 196 drivers that we needed. We're not even going to talk about the number we lived in, but we're going to talk about this number because it's 208. And so this is a number that I love. It's a number that RD and I and David, we talk about a lot. We were able to go and watch them bid on their routes, which is essentially a process where they identify drivers for each of the routes, and we had a driver's name next to every single one of them. So we're really excited to be able to start the year. We know that there'll be call-offs. We know that people will have vacations. We know that they'll have changes in their life as things happen. But again, we're starting from a much better position to start the year. So now I'm going to take a break for a minute, and David Reinhardt, our Director of Educational Services, is going to come up and talk about WATS.
Excuse me. Madam Chair, I'm getting some laryngitis. My apologies. Madam Chair, Honorable Trustees, Dr. Bubb, my first meeting with you, I heard about this transit system that you had designed or conceptually designed, and when the bell schedule was placed at a common level for all secondary schools, I didn't know what it was, but RD and Aaron have helped design this in such a way that all of our students that attend Renaissance, IFA, the two charter schools, and the academies and our CTE programs can now get to school on time, spend the same amount of time at school each day that all of our secondary students attend, get to their home school if they're athletes or participating in activities, and get home safely at night. It's really a new concept in school transportation, and I am going to, if I could flip this slide. Thank you. That's right. WATS is the name of our system. This great design of this logo kind of captures what we're doing. Ultimately, what happens is a high school student that attends any of these schools can walk, ride their bicycle, or drive to the closest school in their physical proximity. So it might be an elementary school. They might live in Star. They might get to Star Elementary. They're going to catch a bus. That bus is going to take them ultimately to Meridian High School. If they attend Renaissance or IFA, they're going to stay on the bus and it's going to drive them right here. And then the same is true when they go home at night. So we have 9 buses in all, and those 9 buses will stop at every school in our district. So 58 schools each day will have a stop, and whoever lives in that area can hop that bus, go to Meridian High School, and then disperse to those select schools. This concept is shown to you in a diagram here. Tomorrow will be the first that runs. We're excited, maybe a little nervous, but I think conceptually it really works. The nice piece about it, we, RD and myself, just for a little bit, talked to Renaissance parents as they came through last week. They were, by and large, excited about it. There's some challenges. People that want to catch seminary at their local high school, people are having to figure that out. Athletics, at the end of the day, we've worked with Jason Warren, the athletic directors, to say, hey, some of these students might be on the late side of things, so hold up as much as you can for the beginning of practice. And so while it's not perfect, it really is pretty amazing that we can take this swath of geography and get students to these various programs and schools throughout the district in a way that we believe safe and effective. So again, RD and Aaron did the heavy lift on this, and we're excited to see it move forward. I'll stand for any questions on Watts.
All right, we're open to questions and comments. Vice Chair Zuna.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. My first question with Watts has to do with any kind of safety concerns. I know that when we do general bus routing, or my understanding is, at least historically, that when general bus routing is done, there's a team that comes together that looks at safety hazards, busy roads, canals, maybe construction. I don't know what all is involved with that. My question is, did Watts go through that same process, and are all of those same safety concerns addressed in the Watts walking schedule?
Thank you, Trustee Azuna. I can verify that the buses themselves have made those trips, but you're asking the question of like getting to that school, to that middle school.
Yeah, I guess it would be it would be a walk zone from a student's house to whatever school they're being initially picked up at. And did we make sure that for those students, any kind of safety concerns for that walk zone was identified? And if we don't have an answer, I just would appreciate looking back into that if we didn't do that.
Thank you, Trustee Azuna. Was any of that done, RD?
Madam Chair, Trustees, Dr. Bubb. So we spent some time looking at all of the ramifications of what this system can do. Not all of the safety issues can be addressed because we don't know where all the students are actually coming from. That is still something that's being evaluated. As we get identified with some of those, then we make adjustments. So it is a system that's going to be kind of transitioning and in process as we get started here. We know of some issues. We don't know of a lot yet, but we will look at each one.
Dr. Bubb.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Azuna, and I would say this: we can always add stops if we felt like there is a situation. We don't know who's going to ride the Watts system, right? Because just because a student lives in a specific area doesn't mean that student's A, riding our Watts system, or B, needing any type of transportation. They could be driving on their own, so on and so forth. So we will be evaluating that, and if we need to add stops, we've had to do that in some areas where there's not where they don't live close enough to a spot. We may be adding some stops along the way, just to make sure that everybody has a safe ride to school.
Thank you. The question that I ask every year is, how many routes do we have that are over an hour? And more specifically, how many students do we have that have a route that's over an hour? And I don't actually want you to answer that tonight, but what I want us to think about, I've looked through the times on some of these, and some of them are much longer than I'm comfortable with. And as we look at this year of Choose Challenge, I appreciate the great work that's done. I think it's unacceptable to have kids continue to be late with the schedule that we had in place before. So I really appreciate that we're doing something different. But as we move ahead, I hope that we also know that we can't stop here, because where we're at right now isn't perfect either, and that's an awful long time for our students to be on the bus. And so I hope we continue to push for that to be better. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee. Trustee, thank you for that challenge, and I think that's correct. Students shouldn't be on the bus for this exorbitant amount of time. I will say this, I know that as we built these routes, we were generous with how much time we thought it was going to take to stop at each of these schools. We're going to gauge as it goes on, especially after the first 2 weeks, to say maybe we can shore this up, and maybe they're riding for an hour and 10 minutes now, but maybe we can get that to 50 minutes or 55 minutes. So we over-exaggerated, or we went into it in a very conservative manner, assuming that it was going to take the maximum amount of time. But we're hoping that we can shore it down, and 2 weeks is sort of the mark we're using to say in 2 weeks we'll adjust. so that we have a better sense. Tomorrow will be, a lot of people will be taking their kids to school tomorrow. They want to take pictures with them at the entrance and some things like that. So we think in 2 weeks we'll be able to make some adjustments, and we'll report back on what our routes look like after that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I follow up with one comment?
Sure.
I do want to say I have full faith and trust in this team to do what's right for our students and everybody that's involved. And the one thing that I appreciate is that you are listening to the feedback, and that you're, as challenges are identified, that you're out there on the bus. I have no doubt that you'll be on that bus to look at what that looks like and addressing things as they come up. And I do really appreciate that.
Thank you, Trustee.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Jonathan Gillen, work your way back up here, sir. Take it away with our CTE Professional Architecture Services.
Perfect. Thank you. Chair, trustees, Dr. Bub. You have the memo attached in front of you. I just kind of wanted to quickly walk through this. So essentially, as we go out for a project, we'll hire an architect. That architect and that agreement and approval actually comes back to the board, and so that is part of this process. So part of the reason why we may choose to bring an architect on in advance of a project is really just to do an evaluation of what our needs are, to help with design of the building and helping us identify specifically what our needs are and how we'll make sure that the project is in alignment with what we want to do for kids. And with that, I can stand for any questions you have.
Any questions or comments? All right, that looks good. Thank you so much. That was painless. Okay, at this point, we're going to move forward with our action session. At this point, we'll look at our elementary attendance policy 500.2. Are there any motions on that? Trustee Benetti?
I move that we adopt the recommendation for elementary attendance policy 500.2.
Do I have a second? Trustee Bachland?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0. Next, I'll look for a motion to approve our secondary attendance policy 500.1. Trustee Benetti?
I move that we accept the recommendation for secondary attendance policy 500.1.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0. Now we'll look at a motion to approve the high school credits and graduation requirement 603.2. Trustee Benetti?
I move that we accept the recommendations for high school credits and graduation requirements policy 603.20.
Second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now we'll look at a motion to approve high school diploma and graduation ceremony policy 603.21. Do I have a motion? Trustee Benetti?
I move that we accept recommendations for high school diploma and graduation ceremony policy 603.21.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Motion to approve transportation bus routes for the 22-23 school year. Do I have a motion? Trustee Benetti?
I move that we accept the transportation bus route schedule as proposed for the 2022 to 2023 school year.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And lastly, motion to approve our professional architecture services new career technical center, our CTE center facility. Do I have a motion? Right, Trustee Benetti.
I move that we accept the memorandum representing the Professional Architecture Services New Career Technical Center and IT facility as proposed.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. At this point, we have a fee hearing which we need to open as a separate portion of this meeting. I will ask quickly, does anybody need a break? Yes. All right, let's go ahead and take a break for 10 minutes. Does that sound good? All right. All right, let's go ahead and just do 10 minutes, so we'll adjourn. All right, we'll resume our open session. It is 7:57 p.m. At this point, I will be open for a motion. We need to start our fee hearing. So I'll open the floor to a motion to open a fee hearing for school nutrition services for the 2022-23 school year. Trustee Redford.
I'm verklempt. I move that we open a fee hearing for school nutrition services for the 2022-23 school year.
All right, do I have a second? Trustee Buckland?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, it is now open. We will allow for patron input. Is there anyone that would like to comment on our fees for nutrition services? All right, seeing none, we'll keep going. At this point, we'll have Jonathan Gillen come up and give us a presentation. And it looks like you have 2 minutes to do it. Go.
Chair, trustees, Dr. Bubb, I talk fast. That would be a new record for me. So, all right, so let's talk a little bit about school nutrition. And so what we're going to walk through is we're just going to talk a little bit about the proposed price increases. We're going to talk a little bit about the why, and then we'll kind of walk through how we've done some of the calculations. I do, before we start, want to take a moment for those of you who may know Shannon. She's sitting back here in case you guys have any really tough questions. Shannon is amazing. Her love and passion for feeding kids is unparalleled. And so we are so lucky to have someone like that here at our district and to work with the school nutrition team that we have. So, all right, so we're going to talk about changes in operations. We're going to talk a little bit about rate increases and the why. Rate changes, there's going to be some comparisons with our peers, and then I'll end up with a couple of questions when we're done. So operational changes, we are changing to paid status. Just to provide clarity, I know you're all well aware of this. This is actually a federal rule change, so it's not necessarily a West Ada change. The federal government and USDA has made these changes, and we're just complying. So we've been free over the past 2 years. That was because of COVID, and so now we're switching back into a paid status, more like what we were pre-COVID. Last rate change that we've done associated with actually changing our rates was in 1920. So what are the reasons for the cost increases? Well, inflationary factors are also pressuring school nutrition as well. And sometimes I'll say even acutely more than what you would see in the marketplace because we have less providers. And so when you go purchase hamburger meat at Safeway, or ground beef, I should probably be more technical, you have lots of options. In school nutrition, there are certain requirements, and so there are a lot less options, right? And so free market system doesn't always comply with that, and so you'll see a lot of increased drivers as well for costs. Just with our distributor itself, we're anticipating a 7.5% CPI increase just for them to be able to provide the services. We did provide an increase to classified staff, and so that's also costs. School nutrition itself, if you remember when we talked about the budget, it's really we're going to go back to terminology, right? We're going to talk about a special revenue fund, and so it needs to generate its own income, and it has its own expenses. And so basically it needs to be self-sufficient. And then we also have expected food cost increases of anywhere between 3 and 40% for certain items. So how are we going to mitigate some of these cost increases? We're talking a little bit about rate increases, so that's going to be one of our mitigating factors. We also have some fund balance in the fund, and remember that's our savings account within the fund, so we're going to utilize some of that within the school nutrition fund. That's allowable and expected, actually. So we have been able to generate a little bit more fund balance throughout the COVID pandemic, and so now we'll start utilizing some of that fund balance and bringing that number down more in alignment with federal standards. And then also we're going to look to try to drive and continue to drive participation. So you're going to see a lot of marketing. We're going to have a lot of conversations about what it is the food we provide and help to drive participation and drive students purchasing it. So school nutrition rate changes, I provided just a breakdown. This is the same information you had last month that we walked through. I just took the proposed off because many of those have been approved by their boards. And so you can see where we are at with our peers. We're relatively comparable. This is one of the steps in the process that we walk through as we look at what our meal prices are. We make this comparison with our peers also looking at the fact that we have a different cost structure than they do, right? And so we have different costs, different expectations, we have different salary rates, we have different staffing levels, and so we have to not only look at our peers, but we also have to look at what we need financially to be able to manage effectively. And so that's how we've designed and driven and come up with what we feel like our meal rates are going to be. These are other a la carte prices. So for these are the other items that we provide. Those are a la carte items that you can buy separately. There is a required markup as part of this. So some of these prices are just driven off USDA markups beyond our cost. And so as you can see, those are provided as well. So what happens really? So tonight we have the budget hearing. If you approve, these new rates will go into effect. We've already been kind of sharing this information as proposed rates with families. They've also been communicating with families about free and reduced lunch applications and how to take advantage of that. And so all of this communication has started to go out. This will be just the final step in the process as part of our approval. And with that, I can stand for any questions that you have.
Any questions? Trustee Benetti?
So I think you already mentioned it because it's a special fund. That means that it's basically a zero-sum game, right? That it doesn't impact the general fund. There's not any quote-unquote subsidies that's happening from the general fund for education that's going to this, with the exception of, you know, just standard working capital usage, which is what I'm assuming that budget surplus is being used for, to sort of align that to federal requirements, because we do receive federal reimbursement for a portion of this, if I'm not mistaken.
Chair and trustees, yes, we do receive federal reimbursement, and I guess I'll clarify my statements a little bit. There is a portion that the general fund plans for and that we pay for each year. We haven't the last couple of years because, again, everything was free, so we didn't have to worry about meal balances. But if a student has a negative balance at the end of the year, USDA rules and regulations say that the general fund actually has to pick that up, or basically the district does. The school nutrition fund itself can't pay for it. And so we usually plan for that. Shannon and I will visit throughout the year. She gets lots of opportunities for me to review her accounts receivable. And then we look at ways that we can try to mitigate that. We talk with parents about free and reduced applications, should they qualify. And then we also work a lot with the foundation and work with donors to try to help offset those costs so that it minimizes the general fund impact. But that's really the main driver, is those free and reduced, or those negative balances that can't carry over. Other than that, our expectation is that at least this year, as we look at evaluating participation coming out of COVID, we're going to utilize that fund balance in conjunction with our rates to be able to basically manage it within the special revenue fund itself, if that makes sense.
Thank you. It does. Follow-up question. So what is the scope of that, what I'll call bad debt? That's my frame for that, right? So what is, is it significant? Is it noise, or,
Chair and trustees, I can tell you that previous to COVID, it would be more of a noise calculation. It was thousands, but not necessarily something where we would look and have to make substantial changes in the general fund. I will tell you that this year's going to be a little bit different for us as we kind of learn what it looks like. Many people who are looking at meals have never paid because they started as a kindergartner, as a first grader, and that was not really, they didn't have to worry about that. And so I think there's going to be some education with that process. So my expectation, it's purely anecdotal. There is no scientific, knowledge behind this, is that really the number will be higher. And so part of what we'll continue to do is to do our best to manage that risk and manage that dollar amount and continue to kind of like identify that balance and how we work with the foundation and with our peers and work with the schools to try to keep that bad debt, which is a very common term, to as low as possible.
Any other comments or questions? Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, we'll move to the action portion of our fee hearing. So I'm open to a motion to approve our school nutrition fee rates for the 22-23 school year. Trustee Redford.
I move to approve school nutrition fee rates for the 2022-23 school year.
Do we have a second? Trustee Buckland?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. At this time, I'll open the floor for a motion to close the fee hearing for school nutrition services. Trustee Redford?
I move that we close the fee hearing for school nutrition services.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, now we will go to the good of the order portion of this meeting. So a quick note to let the community know that effective tomorrow, the board will change their email communication platform from direct email to an online platform through K-12 Insight. Patrons will have easy access to emailing trustees through this streamlined process. And in addition, the board meeting agendas and minutes, as well as board policy, are all being housed in a platform called Assembly. The board will also accept public comment via Assembly. There will no longer be a need to submit a survey for comment. Patrons will be able to comment directly on Assembly agendas once they're posted. So we look forward to hearing from you. All right, with that, are there any future agenda items? All right, seeing none, I'll open the floor for a motion to adjourn. Trustee Redford.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We'll end this meeting and let you all go back to your ice cream truck. Have a good night.